I remember one lecture in rabbinical school that changed my life. My history professor, Dr. Martin Cohn, asked the class, what are the names of the 10 most powerful people in history? Who do you think, Cantor?
Okay. All right. I'm going to go with Joseph from the Bible because he got his own Broadway musical, and I think that's pretty amazing.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Can you top that, Rabbi Gelman?
I'm going more historical. The quiet leadership of Mahatma Gandhi.
I mean, it's not a competition.
I didn't know there was a musical about him, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And what about you, Rabbi Singer?
I'm going to say Mark Zuckerberg.
Well, back in class, when Dr. Cohen, when we would offer our responses, he would just shake his head with each and every name. But finally, he said, you'll likely never know the names of the most powerful people in history because they work behind the scenes. They influence the decision makers and gatekeepers of their time. And while those people in authority certainly had power, many of the people toiling out of public view, well, they were the ones with real power. Dr. Cohn went on to say that power is the ability to produce action. That's it. Power is the ability to produce action. And this made me believe that I could have power, real power, to do good. Tonight, I want to talk about the use of power because we're living in a world and through a time when it's easy to feel powerless to change things that we care about. And I want to talk about power because many of us have wondered how to be powerful as our societal norms continue to shift toward deeper polarization and meaner social media and an earth-sized peanut gallery of cynics and armchair quarterbacks. I want to talk about power because the future depends on us, good people, people of faith, to use our power effectively, to overwhelm those forces that will ride roughshod over us if we don't understand how powerful we can be. So when you think about power, I'm not going to ask the other clergy, just you. When you think about power, what symbol comes to mind? An eagle? A fist? The Lion of Judah? Thor's hammer? I think of fire. Imagine millions of years ago when early humans witnessed fire after a lightning strike. A large tree or a small shrub suddenly aflame. What power from the heavens. And yet they didn't learn how to replicate that fire, that power, by marveling at the heavens. It was probably several millennia later, while someone sharpened a stone tool with a flint, they noticed that sparks ignited some dry grass, and they paid attention to that spark. And then they took action to give it kindling and oxygen, then fanned that small flame into fire. They taught others, and soon enough, we realized how we could make fire. Now that's power. Not aspiring to some grandiose position of authority or magically summoning lightning from the heavens, but having the gumption to roll up one's sleeves, to work in this world, and the humility to recognize a good idea when it presents itself. Powerful. Not only did fire bring warmth and scare off predators, it literally expanded the human brain. How? People gathered around fires, creating more complex social structure that gave rise to human language. And it gave rise to the use and the abuse of organized power. Now, history is full of examples of social structures that enforce this misuse of power. In a letter to Lord John Dalberg Acton, a bishop and historian wondered how famous popes and revered kings could have sanctioned past atrocities. Should their stature somehow pardon them? Acton famously replied, "If there is any presumption, it is the other way against the holders of power, increasing as the power increases. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." And just recently, a prominent politician, when asked how he would define power, replied, "Power is the ability to grant my friends favors and exact revenge on my enemies." Now, as far back as biblical times, our prophets railed against this type of corruption. Yet high ideals don't necessarily make us powerful. Tomorrow morning, we'll hear from the prophet Isaiah. Now, with great clarity, he set out how Jews and really any human being should act in this world, and he berates people who misuse their power. Break the bonds of injustice, he said. Let the oppressed go free. Share your bread with the hungry. Take the homeless into your home. And never neglect your own flesh and blood. Morally clear, but his sharp criticisms had no effect on those in authority. How is it that someone with such important things to say could have such little effect? Isaiah, like a lot of us, has strong opinions. He was quick to judge, but he didn't do the work toward a sustainable solution. Isaiah was a great preacher, but his gifts were in words, not deeds. Because of that, he lacked the ability to act powerfully to change his society for the better. We'll also hear from a different prophet tomorrow, Jonah, who possessed power but lacked the will to do good with it. When God told Jonah to go to Nineveh to preach to the city dwellers, the prophet instead boarded a boat to carefree Tarshish. After plunging to the depths of the ocean and getting swallowed by a fish, Jonah had a change of heart. God again ordered him to Nineveh. Jonah entered the city and proclaimed, "In 40 days, Nineveh will be overthrown." Well, that brought about action. This proclamation scared the king, and the king ordered the people of Nineveh, "Let everyone turn back from their evil ways and from the injustice of which they are guilty." And with that, an entire society changed for the better, for a bit. But after that, Jonah fled once again, this time to the outskirts of town. He ran away from his power to do good. And like the prophets of old, we can fall prey to the overwhelming swirl of catastrophic events and corrupt and inept human action. We want to just run away or simply shout about what is wrong with this world. This year in particular, I've felt this way. But God relies on us not only to think morally, but to act powerfully for the greater good. And we have to pay attention to how power works and then roll up our sleeves and get busy transforming the world. There are a couple of people I want to tell you about who were morally clear like Isaiah and powerful like Jonah. Yet unlike those prophets of old, they influenced people in authority and never wavered or ran from the challenges they faced. They toiled behind the scenes, using their influence to get decision makers to act on behalf of justice. Their names? Julia Lathrop and Lucy Louisa Flower. Never heard of them? Of course not. And they were some of the most powerful people in history. In 1867, Lucy Flower read an op-ed that outraged her about conditions of youth locked up in jails with adults. They were subjected to unimaginable abuse. She contacted her friend, Julia Lathrop, who in turn leapt into action. Lathrop set out to learn more about the situation, touring jails and courthouses. From this place of deeper understanding, Lucy Flower and Julia Lathrop wrote a detailed vision of an alternate court for youth. And to make this vision real, they built strong coalitions of diverse, influential people who helped refine their ideas and champion better treatment of young, incarcerated people. In 1899, the first juvenile justice system was created right here in Chicago. And it influenced almost every nation around the world to follow. Now that's power. How did they do it? In this world brimming with problems, they chose one thing to focus on. And instead of simply giving their opinion, they learned more. And they worked with good people behind the scenes and on the front lines to act to improve people's lives. Every generation needs powerful people like them, big-hearted, visionary, empathic, and inspiring, who will change this world for the good. Every generation needs powerful people like you. And we don't need to look far back into history to find more examples. Take the development of the COVID-19 vaccine. By March of 2020, scientists in laboratories around the world focused singularly on blotting out the novel virus. One scientist explained that before this time, scientists would work in secret, hoarding data from potential competitors because exclusive research can lead to grants and promotions and tenure. But during the pandemic, scientists have shared their discoveries with one another in real time, learning and honing and, God willing, ultimately preventing billions of deaths from this virus. We're young people, galvanized to fight climate change. Some are out front like Greta Thunberg's, whose moral clarity echoed like Isaiah at the World Economic Forum. She demanded right here, right now is where we draw the line. The world is waking up and change is coming whether you like it or not. Others work behind the scenes like 17-year-old Devishi Jha, who founded Be Voyagers, a movement of Gen Z climate advocates, advising multinational corporations on their environmental commitments. We don't need to go far and wide to find models for how to change the world. We can build power right here at Temple Sholem with other people who choose to act. Sometimes the challenges we need to face are right in front of us, like COVID-19 and climate change. Other times they are hidden from our view, like those young people in jail, and they need good people like us, big-hearted, empathic, and visionary, to advocate with them for the rights they deserve. So you know how I know about Lucy Louisa Flower? I live in her house. I actually live at her address, and we have one of those historic signs outside of our door that for years I missed. But knowing her story and understanding her legacy doesn't just make me feel inspired. It bothers me. It bothers me that there are still people who are suffering. Our youth are suffering. She was trying to create a system that would be restorative and rehabilitative, and yet the crunch of history has closed in on them, and they need all of us to be with them. we need to pay attention. We need to act powerfully. And that's what Juliana Schaefer of blessed memory did, an incredible member of this community. After hearing from Alan Mills from Chicago's Uptown People's Law Center about the wretched and dehumanizing conditions of people who were sent for days or even years to solitary confinement, she decided to do something. She founded a program where members of Temple Sholem exchanged letters with people who are imprisoned on a regular basis. This act of chesed has led to advocacy. We have stood with some of them at their court dates, celebrated with others when they found good jobs after their release. We have advocated for and with them at every opportunity. Not just that. We've gone into the juvenile detention center, sat in circles and listened. We've learned. We remind these wonderful human beings that they're made in the image of God. And they've reminded us that we are too. And just because others forgot, we don't. That's what Juliana taught us. Being made in the image of God demands that we act like it. In our morning prayers, we affirm, "Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who feeds the hungry. Blessed are you who clothes the naked." Yet, of course, God does not do that alone. In partnership with the divine, we do. It is we who act so that God's presence can be felt in this world. Like Juliana, let Temple Sholem be your place where you can come into your power. Ignite that spark given to you by the divine in whose image you've been made. Together we set vision and we can be strategic, stay hopeful and inspired. And now is the time. As we enter Yom Kippur and reflect on our past sins, we think about the challenges in our world. Contemplate an issue, just one, that has especially bothered you. One that made you want to run away from this crazy, messed up world. One that made you scream or cry. And then stay with it, not just tonight. And not in a place of shame about what you could have done. Stay with it in this year ahead and bring us with you. Learn more about it. Instead of letting that feeling of being overwhelmed or desensitized or dejected, dig deeper, learn more, get proximate. As Brian Stevenson taught us when he stood on this bema, proximity is powerful because it will teach us the things we need to know, and it will teach us that we have more power than we think we have. Lean into this power and let it change you so you can change this world. For God's sake, work with good people, not yes people, but good people, smart people, people you might know or might meet at Temple Sholem. Big hearts, willing to gather more people to build real power for change. And play the long game with the next generation. Learn from them and teach them. Most of all, believe. We can do this. God, how this world could change if only we use our power. Gamar Chatima Tova. May our actions inscribe us in this great book of life for good. Amen.
Yeah, it might be all that you get. Yeah, I guess this might well be it. If you slow down for a second, take your time. You know I'm yours if you remember that you're mine. And when everybody's telling me I have no time, I prove them wrong again. Oh yeah, it might be all that you get. And yeah, yes, this might well be it. Well, heaven knows I tried. No, my hands won't be tied down, and I will not lay them down, 'cause I can finally see the truth. So simple but so clear, accepting an ocean's depths. We're out of reach for me and you. If you're coming up for air, breathing in, you know I'll be there when you first begin. And when everybody's telling us we have no time, we'll prove them wrong again.